Well, hello again, my name's Jamie Duff, owner of Sovereign Hobbies, and this evening I thought I'd make a little video of something I need to do anyway in attaching a Pontos wooden deck to this kit here of HMS Repulse Brighton Trumpeter in 1/350th scale. Wooden decks are something I've been using for most of my builds for the last couple of years. I quite like using them. They encourage my laziness and they achieve a quality of finish on the deck that I struggle to do with paint, but mainly it's laziness. So the product itself, there are several manufacturers. This is by Pontos Models. They come with a self-adhesive, very thin wood veneer with a deck planking pattern into the wood. The deck itself is laser cut, and all the little protrusions that need to be removed to fit the kit itself are laser cut. It comes with a solid but laser cut backing plastic sheet as well, which has to be removed. But before removing it from the backing sheet, we want to do some preparation work, because once it's removed from the sheet, it's both very floppy and also it's very sticky. So anything that we want to remove, I'll just point here with the scalpel, anything we want to remove, like these little holes that are cut into the deck, or indeed the turret barbettes or some hatches, I want to remove all these first before unpeeling the backing plastic and giving myself a big piece of sticky wood. So one of the main advantages with using a wooden deck, and I'll just put the ship into shot here, is when modelling full hull in particular, I've mounted on some pedestals that I've made from drawer knobs from a local do-it-yourself or hardware store. What it means when you're using a wooden deck is I can do something sacrilegious like hack a hole in where the wooden planking detail would be in order to be able to access the screws with which I mount the ship. That would be a disaster if I was painting the deck, but all I need to do when using a wooden deck is to reinsert the piece that came from here. I'll very quickly stick that down with some Tamiya fast setting glue, and then we'll get back to preparing the deck for use, and by the time I've done that, this glue will have set. So I'll put this over here out of the way. What I'm going to have ready to work with the deck is, to bring this back in, I use a scalpel. I use a number 11, no, this is a 10A blade, sorry, but really what I want is the pointy tip. I'm also going to use this wooden chisel. The chisel is actually neither here nor there, but what I want is a burnishing tool, and a piece of wooden dowel such as this is very handy for ensuring the deck is well adhered. So to get on to preparing the wooden deck, if we could focus in a little bit, what I'm going to do is just use the very tip of the blade to get underneath the laser cutting and remove each one and stick them to a piece of scrap that we don't need. I'll work my way around the deck and remove all of these one by one until everything's out of the way. Up you come. There we go. Plenty of these. And the turret barbette as well also is laser cut and needs to come out. Just like that. For those of you in the UK and remember Blue Peter on television, I'm going to pull their trick and say, here's one I did earlier. So I've already completed removing everything for this one, and what I'm going to show now is how you go about attaching it to the ship. It is a high tack adhesive on the model, on the deck, sorry. I've used one of these in the past, and I've used several to be honest. The only one that I've had a problem with the deck peeling with was when I applied it straight onto quite a dusty deck with a lot of matte paint overspray. Since then, having learned the lesson of the peeling deck, I have been glossing the deck lightly, and I don't know if you can see the sheen on the camera, but I very roughly brushed in the main areas a gloss acrylic varnish. It's fast drying, and it gives me a slightly smoother surface. The adhesive on the deck better adheres to. So now that we're ready, everything's done. You only really get one shot to line everything up. I'm not going to say there's a right or a wrong way to do this, but the way that I've been doing it, and it works for me, is to use the turret barbets as the main alignment aid. And once they're located, you can't really go too far wrong, in my admittedly limited experience. So what I'm going to do now is just get my scalpel under the extremities of this and start to peel the whole deck up from the backing plastic. I don't want to bend it too much because it is wood and I don't want to break it. So I'm just going to work away at this for a little minute. And with the scalpel, if it's giving some resistance, there isn't any harm in just running down the laser cut edge just to make sure that everything comes up. It's relatively robust, but you have to remember it's a thin veneer and we don't want to tear it. So wherever there's a corner, I'll get the scalpel under there and just work it up a little bit. And sooner or later it just seems to come away. So we're starting to get there. This one's just giving me a little bit of resistance, and again, to avoid tearing, I'll get the scalpel underneath. Here we go. Almost there. One thing which I've taken for granted, hoping that it would be obvious, but perhaps it isn't, is that I've painted everything to do with the hull already. And one of the key advantages that using the wooden deck brings is that I don't need to do any masking of any of the deck furniture that protrudes up through the deck, because I can paint all that carelessly beforehand, and then when the deck goes on, it's done all the masking job for me. So now I've got this sticky wooden deck in my hand. I'm going to align the ship so that you can see what I'm doing, hopefully. And like I said before, I'm going to align the deck with the turret barbette, because if that goes on, everything else should as well. Right, so we'll line up on the barbette, as I was saying. That's it, over the barbette. The next thing I'm going to do is make sure that these hatches line up, and then coming down here, just give it a little bit of a twist before anything tacks to make sure that everything lines up all the way to the very stern. And there we go. I'm going to give that the slightest little nudge down there. Then I'm going to get my wooden tool and just start burnishing down. I use a rolling action around all the protrusions. Oh geez. Right. And this just squeezes the deck right down onto the wood and makes sure that it's well tacked. And anything that sticks up through the deck protrudes as it's supposed to. And you can see, without any masking effort on my part whatsoever, I now have some lovely deck details showing through. Here we go. Right. I'm just going to walk this around the turret barbette. Here we are. There we go. Right. And it's quite often a snug fit around the superstructure just like this, but what that does do is it makes sure that it fits all the way down. So I'm just going to use the edge of the blade here without scratching my paintwork. just push this right down, like so. All the way down. And that's all there is to it. That's the quarter deck fitted to HMS Repulse in 1/350 scale by a trumpeter using the Pontos wooden deck. Good evening.